Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the March 10th, 2021 meeting of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department Airport. We will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Following that, I'd like to ask everyone to remain standing in a moment of silence. Indiana Department of Correction Lieutenant Eugene Lasco, who was killed in the line of duty on February 21st at the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City. Mr. Cooley?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to just add a little bit to the tragedy with Lieutenant Lasco. There was also a sergeant at the Indiana State Prison that was being assaulted at the time, and that's when Lieutenant Lasco stepped in to assist, and he was fatally stabbed. Just got word yesterday that a former colleague of mine, George Payne, who was at the Indiana State Prison, who's now the assistant superintendent in Miami County, was stabbed in the chest in Miami County. He was airlifted to Indianapolis, and we're very happy to say that luckily the location of the wound didn't hit anything severe organs, and he has already been released, and I believe back home. So Sheriff, I want to thank you for sharing that information with us. Just a reminder that, you know, we never know when it's going to hit or how it's going to hit, but everybody just has to watch their six and look out for each other and stay safe out there, please. So, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting? Are there any corrections? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve. Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Thank you. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Mr. Kimmel. How are you?
Good, thank you, sir.
Members of the board. Good to see you today. Thank you for taking a moment of silence to recognize Lieutenant Lasco. This has certainly served as a lesson to us as well, and we've got a great partnership with the Indiana Department of Corrections, and we feel their pain. They certainly have been in our thoughts and prayers. I mentioned to our administrative staff yesterday at a meeting that I was at a meeting on Friday in Indianapolis, Criminal Justice Institute, and administrators from the Department of Correction are on the board as well, and they specifically noted during their meeting that they were overwhelmed by our kindness at the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office and the partnership that we have. As you know, they have the largest imprint here in LaPorte County than any other county in the state of Indiana. We have a very large prison population and system here present in our county, and we felt it. We certainly continue to thank and pray the Lasco family and Sergeant Schmidt as well that was injured in that assault, and certainly Deputy Warden Payne down in Miami Correctional as well. We'll go ahead and get started with today's meeting, and the first item on the agenda is the fact that Deputy Jonathan Sikorski is in week 9 of basic recruit training at the Northwest Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. Since we met the last time, he has had his criminal law examination. He did score 100%, which is quite an accomplishment. It's very rare that anyone scores perfectly. With that said, it's our understanding that there were 6 people in this class that scored perfect scores, and he was one of them. So we're really, really proud of him. His scheduled graduation date is April 23rd, 2021. This week he is down at Plainfield with the rest of his recruit class. They're undergoing emergency vehicle operations training down there. So they're staying at the ILEA this week and participating in that training, and they'll return on Friday. In the meantime, probationary deputy Jacob Payne is now in the final phase of his field training, phase 4, and he's doing quite well. He's been training on the day shift this week, and he will also this week be with the Drug Task Force and our investigative division. Upon his completion of field training, he'll be assigned to the afternoon shift. He will report to Captain Brian Kragalski, Sergeant Jeff Wright, and Sergeant Andrew Hahn. In the month of February, we had 7 calls for service at Franciscan Hospital in Michigan City. This was 6 fewer than what we had responded to in January. We did last month experience a 19% decrease in calls for service from January to February. In January, we responded to 2,557 calls for service compared to 2,060 in February. The number of crashes decreased by 31% from 140 in January to 96 in February, and we're really pleased with this number, especially given that we had really the first sustained amount of bad weather in the month of February. And traditionally, when we have really bad weather, the number of collisions, motor vehicle collisions, increased, but it actually decreased last month. As you'll recall, we had about a 3-week period of really bad, really cold weather. We also issued 31% fewer citations in February than in January. A lot of that had to do with the fact that speeds and aggressive driving were reduced because of the bad weather. In January, we issued 639 citations, while in February, we issued 439 citations. But in February, we also issued 310 warning tickets. Our annual report is now complete and will be published to our department website. In 2020, we responded to 28,903 calls for service, which was an 8% reduction from 2019. We investigated 3 homicides in 2020, which remained the same from the previous year. So in 2019, we also had 3 homicides. 2 of the homicides that we investigated last year were individuals that their bodies were dumped in LaPorte County, so we assumed the lead role and the reporting purposes for the Uniform Crime Report and for NIBRS. So we assumed the responsibility for those homicides. In addition, there was a homicide that happened inside a home where a father shot his son and unfortunately killed him. Our overall violent crime rate, however, was down 4%. And property crime was also down, which included a 29% reduction in burglaries and thefts, but there was a 29% increase in motor vehicle thefts. In many cases, if we could just get people to not leave their cars unattended and running, or their keys in their car, that certainly would help us. They would lock those vehicles. Our arrests were down 25%, as were the number of citations that we issued. And we talked about this nearly every month last year during our Merit Commission meetings about the number of arrests that were down. Some of it was because people weren't out quite as much, and it was also because we were asking that our deputies and our officers and troopers countywide exercise as much discretion as they possibly could, realizing that some of these citations were very expensive, and that we just want to redirect and re-educate people and make sure that they're not committing the same mistake again. We investigated 1,176 motor vehicle crashes last year, which was a 7% decrease from the previous year. Alcohol-related crashes increased up 213% from 24 to 75, and the number of fatality crashes that we investigated was up also 43% from 7 to 10, so it wasn't that much. Interestingly enough, when I was at the Criminal Justice Institute on Friday, Superintendent Doug Carver from the Indiana State Police made a presentation, and he also was alarmed statewide by the number of alcohol-related crashes, the increase statewide, and the number of fatalities that increased statewide. That morning, ironically, the International Association of Chiefs of Police had released some statistics from 2019 to demonstrate that this was a problem nationwide. If you'd indulge me for a second, I can tell you that preliminarily, last year there were 42,060 people that were killed in automobile crashes, which was an 8% increase over the previous year. So you can see it was happening nationwide, and our numbers are pretty close to what was happening statewide and nationally. Safety experts believe that the increase in fatalities, despite the 13% drop in the number of miles driven by U.S. motorists, was attributed to riskier driving, including speeding on less packed roadways. Certainly aggressive driving attributed to that as well. It's something that we see locally also. I thought you'd find that interesting. Some other interesting facts regarding crash data here in LaPorte County is the fact that the most common day of the week that motor vehicle crashes happened in 2020 were Thursdays and Fridays between the hours of 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Cool Spring Township had the most crashes of any township, having 47 more than the next closest township, which was Springfield Township. Prairie Township and Johnson Township had the fewest crashes. And we also investigated 312 Carver deer crashes. With that being said, there were a number of collisions that involved deer that we just did a damage report because it didn't meet that threshold of $750. If it was over that, then we would do a standard crash report. But we did have more than that, but reportable crashes that involved deer were 312. Something that we had gotten away from several years ago when the state of Indiana went to what's called the ARIES crash data system, in which the state of Indiana had all law enforcement dump all their crash statistics into this computer system so the state could analyze crash data in real time. We got away from what was called the dirty dozen intersections. And it is, you may recall from years ago, our annual report, we had to identify for the state of Indiana the 12 most dangerous intersections in LaPorte County. We got away from that when ARIES did that on our behalf, but I asked Lisa Harlow, who handles our crash data, if she could identify the 12 most dangerous intersections in LaPorte County. That included intersections in the municipalities as well, whether it be crash data that was collected from the Indiana State Police or crash data from the LaPorte Police Department or Michigan City Police or Trail Creek or Long Beach or any of the other municipalities in LaPorte County. Of those, there were, of the 12 most dangerous intersections, 10 of those 12 intersections were in the rural area of the county in which we were responsible for. The intersection that had the most crashes last year in LaPorte County was State Road 39 and US 20, and it was followed closely with County Road 300 North and US 421, followed by 400 North and Wozniak Road. The next most dangerous intersection was State Road 2 and US 421. Next was Johnson Road and US 20. The next intersection was State Road 2 and US 6, followed by a location on the Indiana Toll Road, which the Indiana State Police Toll Road Division would be responsible for. The next most dangerous intersection was US 20 and US 35, followed by State Road 39 and US 35 in the city of LaPorte. The next was 18th Street and State Road 39. And the next intersection was US 30 and US 421. One of the things that we're really particularly proud of is for a number of years in this list would be included intersections like 300 West and US 20, 400 West and US 20, Byron Road and US 20, and certainly State Road 2 and US 20. Those were always in the top 12 intersections. You'll notice that none of those intersections are on this list, and we think that is because of not only our heavy law enforcement presence on US 20 and where we're slowing people down, but also because of the safety initiatives that the Indiana Department of Transportation has taken, which includes improving sight lines and includes the rumble strips not only on the shoulder of the road, but certainly on the center. And you remember that when we had a plague of crashes on US 20, the vast majority of those crashes were caused by either driver inattention or left of center or people being distracted. And we know those rumble strips do a really good job when someone starts to drift left of center of catching their attention. They're able to correct themselves before they have either an opposite direction side swipe or a head on. So not only did we reduce the number of crashes on US 20, but the number of fatality crashes has been reduced as well. So we're pleased with these numbers. With this said, we do have some goals in mind, and one of our goals always is to reduce the number of crashes that we're experiencing. And so we're going to pledge that we're going to increase our enforcement in those areas that it needs to be, but also we're going to continue to work with our other law enforcement partners and certainly the Indiana Department of Transportation to improve that. One of the areas that certainly was one of the, if not the most deadly intersections in the state, in LaPorte County and the state of Indiana for that matter, was US 20 and State Road 2. And when the Department of Transportation talked about making improvements there and installing the dog bone and constructing that, there were a lot of naysayers out there, a lot of people that were complaining, and the state of Indiana said it won't reduce the number of crashes, or it may not reduce the number of crashes. It certainly is going to reduce the number of fatalities and the number of injuries. And it is beyond our expectations and theirs, not only reduce the number of crashes, but it's eliminated injuries and fatalities. To the best of my knowledge, not having the numbers in front of me, we are single-digit crashes at that intersection since it's been opened, and certainly single-digit crashes, collisions each and every year. So we're pleased with that as well. So for the naysayers, this is actually working and it is saving lives. Yes, it did cost some money, but you can't put a price tag on people's lives, especially the students that were traveling to and from New Prairie High School and Middle School. So mission accomplished. Also of interesting note last year was the fact that our civil process declined by 39%. The number of individuals processed into our jail was also down 29%. It went from 4,520 in 2019 to 3,231 in 2020. We also managed last year 503 registered sex offenders, 209 of which are not incarcerated and reside in LaPorte County. So with that said, the difference between that may be individuals that are at the work relief center at any of the 2 or 3 Indiana Department of Correction facilities here in LaPorte County, or people that may not live here but are registered sex offenders and work here or go to school here in LaPorte County. So as you can see, we have a number of sex offenders that we do manage. We are required by Indiana Code to manage sex offenders that work, are educated, or reside in our county. This report and our annual jail report will still be published to our department website, as they always are. I know Captain Allen will be putting on a news release soon about our numbers, calls for service, and some of our accomplishments that we had last year. At this point, I would like Captain Al to come forward if you could present highlights from your annual jail report.
Hold on a second. Do you want to come this way or not?
You're fine.
Okay. So first of all, in 2018, I sat down with our administrative staff and had some visions of where I wanted the jail to go. Quickly, we bought in, they bought in, and we came up with a plan and we executed it, right? We are not exactly where we want to be by that vision, but it's, I got to tell you, I'm very impressed, very satisfied with where we've progressed. So, anyways, so I've got this, our annual report, and I can provide you guys copies if you need. These are all public records. So, I'm going to touch on some things that I think are probably more important from my perspective, just having knowledge of being inside the jail and working every day. So, I highlighted. So, based on this last year, 2020, it's been an unprecedented year for the sheriff's office, specifically for the jail. We didn't have this idea that what we dealt with last year was going to happen. So, where I'm going with that with the medical, we went into contract with Quality Correctional Care in May of 2019, and Sheriff and I have had candid conversations about this, and I will tell you that we didn't know what we were going into in 2020. So looking at how we proactively went after the contract where we are able now to be 24/7 medical coverage within the jail, it's very satisfying having gone through 2020 and seeing how our medical staff responded, how they provided the medical service for our jail, for our county. It was remarkable. And I honestly, as I sit here today, it's very gratifying to know that we made it through it. Looking back to where we didn't have that coverage prior to May of 2019, when you compare to what I visually saw all year long in 2020 and what the service that they provided and to the inmates, just providing them medical care, it's something that people probably don't want to talk about in a public setting. People don't think about it. They don't think it's important, but I will tell you it is. We have a lot of medically challenging inmates that come into our facility each day, and they provided that, but again, dealt with the coronavirus and all of the things that were associated with that. So the medical contract that was in place was something that I think that we need to focus on when you look at this report. You can see where on page 8 there are deposits that we make to the general fund. Housing DOC inmates with the coronavirus, we were not the only facility. Mr. Kimball, you can appreciate this. DOC had their challenges as well. So we weren't able to bring people to jail, or I'm sorry, we weren't able to transport people to Department of Corrections as they normally would. So we housed more people that would have been not with us during that time. Nonetheless, you can see the numbers. So we were able to collect the majority of the monies that we normally wouldn't have had to deal with, if that makes sense. I can explain further if you guys have questions. Another important thing, restitution for when a prisoner causes damage into our facility. We have instituted that probably since 2018, or early in 2018, and each year we see a progressive increase on the money that we recover. Some of those things it's out of our control. We do bill them, we do charge them, but if they don't have those funds, we are not able to recover that. But we were able to recover $3,700 of damages in the jail. We look at that as not so much as a punitive action, it's more or less just holding them accountable. It's all tax dollar money that is required to repair that. So,
Captain, is that damage, is that due to like broken sprinkler heads, tearing sinks off the walls, that type of stuff?
Yes, broken sprinkler heads. We worked collaboratively with the prosecutor's office, where we will criminally charge them, and through that process, they are found guilty. We have restitution that's tagged on to punishment, if you will. So, shift operations this was a challenge. So we had so many people that were off with their different illnesses throughout the year. Our overtime budget, our overtime that we used in 2020 was roughly, round numbers, $214,000, a substantial amount of money, which was a little bit higher than $21,000, higher than 2019. However, when you break this down, the unexpected, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the coronavirus was an unexpected circumstance that we had to deal with. That incurred around, 28,000, 29,000 in overtime that we obviously couldn't control. Also with that, in overtime, we had the Criminal Rule 26, which was a process that was instituted last year. Probably didn't get a good opportunity for it to put its claws into to see exactly what the benefit of that process is. But nonetheless, we still did incur around $20,000 in overtime for that. With that, we're talking large numbers, right? Our ultimate goal, though, we are actively involved with budgeting. We want to make sure that we are being the best, the most efficient, taking into consideration money. It's tax dollar money. So, with that being said, if you take out the two unforeseens, we were substantially lower than we were the year before. This is a progressive trend that we've done in 2018, 2019, now in 2020. Hopefully our goal in 2021 will be even less, and we can hopefully get through without any more pandemic fallout. So one thing I think that many people, and again, Mr. Kimball, you can appreciate this, classification officers. Again, we were proactive. Back in late 2019, we had a classification officer, but we worked on and instituted a classification team. Not knowing what we're walking into in 2020. So, with that being said, that classification team was heavily worked out during 2020. There was such a process with taking into consideration the keeping parts and all the necessary medical issues that we have to take into consideration when we are housing people. Then you throw in quarantine blocks, which we've been doing, and still to this day, we are still doing. They were heavily challenged, but they responded well, and Thankfully, we're still in good shape. So, have to make sure that the classification team got credit for their hard work. In 2020 as well, we went into contract with Tiger Correctional Services to provide our kitchen. A very good decision that we made to, again, taking into consideration money that we're spending. As compared to 2019, we saved $211,000 by going into contract. And really the service, it's a substantial amount of money, and the service that we are getting for that did not tail off. If anything, we feel that it's better. There's a lot of documentation that goes into place with just holding the kitchen. We wouldn't think that, but you have medical diets that are all kept, records kept, religious diets, all those type of things that we need to keep for litigation in the future, if there is any.
You have a rough idea what the daily or meal cost was?
The daily, well, it fluctuates.
Right.
I don't remember the exact number right off the top of my head, but it fluctuates based on our average daily population.
$1.53 per meal, but that includes labor.
Yes. Which, by some standards, that's higher than what we were in the past, but it's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
Well, the record keeping, as you alluded to, with the medical diets, the religious diets,
Yes.
should that ever fall into court,
Yes.
to have a independent food service company handling that in lieu of the county, it kind of takes that liability away.
It does, and those are some of the considerations that we had when we went into contract with them. The nice thing about it, they keep those records forever. So it's nice. We actually have a backup record keeping as well. So operational improvements that we put into place. Some of these were put into place actually prior to 2020, but I think it's worth mentioning based on the climate that we all are working in today in law enforcement. So we in late 2019 we instituted. We've always had a use of force review. But in 2019, we upped it to where we review that every 2 weeks. We feel that we're reviewing those reports. That's again a litigation situation potentially. We feel that if we're reviewing them every 2 weeks, we're going to stay on top of things, catch things maybe where we need to train more on. So that's been a benefit, and I think that's worth mentioning. As well, in 2019. We instituted some mandatory diversity training, and we've done it 2019, 2019, 2020, and again, we're on schedule already this year to do that. We've made it a mandatory training, and we feel it's just going to create a more well-trained staff, plus a positive work environment. I think it's very important to know that. We've adopted the 21st century policing. It kind of goes hand in hand with that.
How do you implement the training for diversity? Is that somebody from the outside? Is that a combination of?
We work with our human resources, LaPorte County Human Resources, and we do it here again because we're taking into consideration our overtime budget. So we do training weekly. And we do it at different hours. Many times you'll see me at 4 o'clock in the morning so we can accommodate the midnight shift. So we do it in-house.
And are there videos, text?
I'm sorry, yes. Yes, videos, PowerPoints. Okay. Different things.
Very good, thanks.
Yeah. If it was a perfect world and we had enough money to worry about, we would just send everybody out. And, there's but we're trying to get that.
Well, I think continual training's imperative, yeah.
Very important, yes. Lastly, or not lastly, but also kind of in the spirit of what we're talking about, we instituted a duty to intercede policy. Again, the current climate that we're doing, it sounds like it's something that would be automatic, but we feel that the policy to have in place is a good thing. Again, protects us, and we train on that. So kind of understand why we do what we do. So some of the other accomplishments in 2020, going back to where I started, we had this outlook, this vision we have a hiring pool that we were able to establish. Really proud of that because people do leave. We have officers that get promoted to maybe the merit side, or they go on to other agencies, or people just go into different careers. So we wanted to have that hiring pool in place to where we can have we replace our staff. We've been at full staff generally since December of 18, and we're real proud of that. So we feel that, current climate of law enforcement can sometimes be not looked on very well, right? By general standards. We have a hiring pool, and so we look at it I personally look at it kind of different. It's remarkable to see that we have young folks that are wanting to get into this line of work, because so many of these the deputies that we hire in our facility move on to careers in law enforcement. So it's kind of refreshing.
A feeder system.
Absolutely. Yep. So the last thing that I think I want to talk about is our standard operating guidelines, or SOP, or SOG, depends on how you refer to it. That is something that we've worked on. We've had it on our to-do list during my time. I'm in my 4th year now as a jail commander, but even jail commanders prior to me has always been one of their goals to get done. It hadn't been redone, or hasn't been revised, I should say, since 2010. We have it done. We got it done last year. Jeannie Crossland was very instrumental in that, and kind of taken that as one of her probably more her driving force behind it. And really proud of that, because we need to have those SOGs. They need to be in place, and they need to be updated. So we've done that. We've instituted a few things in there. We're waiting for the blessing from the county attorney and the sheriff's attorney. But we should be getting it, honestly, any day now. So that'll be something that'll be beneficial for our department.
And that'll be in keeping with the 21st century policing that you alluded to earlier.
Yes.
Update on policies and procedures.
Yes. So going back, this annual report, we do this every year, and I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about it, because I don't think many people actually, maybe they don't realize that we do this. We're required to do this. But I do like the idea of talking about it. There's a lot of work that goes in, and every year we put this together. Jean and I sit down and do it together, and you don't realize what you're doing when you're doing it throughout a year's time. You guys have all had careers, and there's different things that you do as the years go by. And I will tell you that I'm impressed, and it's not me, it's our staff. I always have to go back to our staff. If we don't have our staff, we don't get any of this stuff accomplished. And I just can't say enough about how well they've responded. 2020 is going to be an unprecedented year. I hope I don't have to look back and have to pick which one was more. I hope I have just the one. 2020 was the one. I think we all can understand that. But they've responded really well. And, we've kind of hit 2021. Often we're going to kind of hit the brakes running here. We had some hiccups with actually getting the virus in the jail, but they responded really well. And as I sit here today, we are COVID-free and operating like we were prior to, and we're just in a good place. So I appreciate it, Sheriff, for allowing me to speak, and thank you. If you guys need copies, I can provide these to you. I just didn't do it for the sake of paper.
Captain, question: How many assaults on staff, say, in the last year have you had?
In the last year, on our monthly, I don't know the exact number.
Okay.
On our monthly reports that are provided to the sheriff for each month at the merit board meetings, it is on there. I can tell you off memory, I haven't had any assaults on staff where, to the point, the criteria on that, what you will get is to where we are charging somebody. Part of this byproduct of what we do, there are times when we get into altercations, and there's injuries, there's different things that occur. I don't want to say we pick and choose based on the circumstance that may dictate whether we charge somebody or not, and that those, if you're looking for that number of assaults on staff, that would be people that were charged.
So the diversity training coupled with the 21st century policing do you feel that has really helped create a better atmosphere in the jail between the offenders and the staff?
I do. Going back to 2018 and that vision that we talked about, I think the delivery of what we do as officers, as professionals, with an offender is so very important. When we do our interviews with our new officers that we're potentially going to hire, I always challenge them. I say, "What's your best weapon?" And they're younger, so they're thinking tasers and OC and all this stuff. It's your mind and your mouth, and it does go right in tune with what 21st policing is. Our minds and our mouth are so valuable today, and I will tell you. So that's something that we harp on a lot. We talk about. We train monthly about these things, and I personally feel that. When the captain goes and speaks to a particular offender, maybe a challenging offender, with other people, I talk to them about this, and they understand. And we can have meaningful conversations with offenders and break down the law enforcement to offender, or however you want to word that, relationship. Whether it's time to build, actually.
Good.
So I do see the benefits of it.
Thank you to you and your staff.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
I'd just like to say, too, that the administrative team in our jail is second to none. Certainly Captain Knott and Sergeant Wiltshire, Sergeant Oliver, and Jeannie Crosland, who's our administrative coordinator. They are a fantastic team. I think part of the key to success and the fact that we have fewer than average, when I say average, most correctional facilities assault on staff, is the fact that when we engage with our inmate population, we listen. It's not just about us talking, and we're attentive to their needs. The other thing that I'm particularly proud of is, like every other correctional facility, especially jails, we have a very, very sick population. I'll give you an example. We had an individual that came in here about a month ago, and he had a severely broken leg, something that he didn't take care of while he was free and he was on the outside. He came here, and it suddenly became our responsibility. So we had no choice but to schedule an emergency surgery. The estimate on that surgery was $80,000, and our taxpayers would have been on the hook for it. He was not eligible for HIP 2.0 through Indiana because he was a resident of the state of Illinois, and he had no insurance, so we were responsible for that. We would have had to have placed several guards on him while he was in the hospital, and it would have been a protracted stay in the hospital for him. Fortunately, he was released the day prior to the scheduling of his, or the date for surgery. It was up to him as to whether or not he showed up then, since he had been released. But our medical staff treats the inmates as though they're patients, and they don't treat them as though they're inmates. And that's really important. They have to have that underlying respect that they're here for a reason, the danger factor, and respect that, but they treat them as though they are patients, and they give them quality care. And the inmates are really aware of that when the medical staff comes into their block and visits them, or has them into the medical wing so they can examine them and provide for their needs, that they are being treated as though they are a human being. And we preach and impress upon our staff, treat everybody as though they're a lady and a gentleman, until they give you a reason not to. Obviously, you have to respect why they're here, but that goes a long way. When Captain Knott talked about the overtime that we expend in the jail, a lot of that overtime is due to the fact, as I mentioned before, we have a very sick inmate population. They're over at the hospital a lot, or they're going to doctor's visits, because we don't employ specialists here at the jail. When these individuals need to go to a specialist, we have to take them to a specialist. That means that we have to have, well, we do have transport people. Sometimes we don't have enough staff, and especially with COVID, our numbers have been reduced so much that we have to pay someone maybe to transport, or people to transport, or for individuals to be in the hospital while someone is there. When we had COVID, and we went all of last year without a single COVID case in the jail, and then January 4th came and it spread like wildfire, we had a number of COVID cases. We're pleased that we are now COVID-free because of the quarantining that we went through in the jail, and the isolation steps, processes that we had in place. In fact, we did an excellent job of mitigating it. We did have several people who went to the hospital, inmates, not because they had COVID, but because they had severe underlying issues. Maybe they had COPD, maybe they had cancer, maybe they were brittle diabetics. They hadn't been taking care of themselves prior to arriving in the jail. Last year we had an individual that we housed here, was 92 years old. He was here for several counts of child molestation. We had to buy a $5,000 medical bed because he was bedridden, and the judge was unwilling to release him even to ankle monitor. We had to have our staff, 2 staff, one hold him up and one feed him 3 times a day. And he had, as I said, terminal cancer, and we had to pay for his hospitalization, which was very lengthy, his medicines as well. Fortunately, he was sentenced. He's now in the Department of Correction. But as I've said, had he died here in the jail, and certainly it would have been a result of terminal cancer and the fact that he was 92 years old, it would have been headlines in the media that someone died in our jail. Yet people die in the hospital every day, and you don't hear anything about it. But if someone dies here in our jail, people would have been asking, how could we have allowed that to happen? And we're limited as to what we can say. So it's important we talk about the jail because it's an important aspect of this department. This is one of our obligations is to maintain the jail, and everyone who is arrested in LaPorte County must come to the LaPorte County Jail. So we're the repository, for lack of a better word, for everyone that is arrested. So thank you for the time to listen to what we do in the jail, the presentation that Captain Ott had. We do appreciate that. We'll move on. Last month we did report that we needed to replace 13 vehicles this year. We've received permission from the county commissioners to seek bids for 9 all-wheel drive sport utility vehicles for patrol, 3 pickup trucks, and 1 jail van. The beauty of the pickup trucks is they're very inexpensive. They're less expensive than the SUVs, and certainly less expensive than some of the command vehicles that we've had in the past. We could buy 2.5 pickup trucks for the cost of one of those Tahoe style or suburban style command vehicles.
So are you going to be giving the pickup truck to those who have been involved in several accidents?
No, we will not. We will be trading 17 vehicles, and we hope to receive bids by April 7th, and then we'll be approaching the council for funding at their April meeting. Chief Eag is here, and he's going to have a presentation. As you'll see, it should have been a PowerPoint, and I'm going to apologize to him and for him because, you know, the beauty of a reservation is to keep the reservation. And we had a reservation for the room next door, but apparently schedules don't mean anything to others. We were usurped from that room, and so we're here. And while he did have a PowerPoint that he was going to put on for you and the public regarding our pension, because it involves a lot of money, we were booted out of that room, so we're here. So he does have paper material for you.
Thank you, Sheriff. No need to apologize. It's not your fault this morning. So I had a presentation put together, and it was just a quick presentation, kind of giving everybody a status and an update on our pension plan, where it's at, where it's come from, and where it's going. And I put this together to educate people, to educate county council, to educate the public, educate you guys, put facts out there. So we're not going based on opinions and rumors out there. If you flip the second page, you'll see that we're asking the council this year for $1.395 million. That's up $67,000 from last year of $1.328 million. And our current pension value is over $40 million, and that's great. And I'm really going to highlight on that later into this presentation up to where we've been to where we're at now. There's a couple of reasons for the increase. Raises, the yearly raises we do get from the county council obviously increases the merit payroll, which will increase the county contributions. And I've got some interesting numbers later on that's going to highlight, and it was pretty interesting once I started comparing where we're at now to see how they all just fall right in line. So it's, although we're seeing the raises, it's nothing that's out of control. The yearly cost of living raises to our retirees. They get the COLA raises. And the increase of number of retirees receiving payments every year has increased. There are several requirements that require the county to fund our pension plan. One of them is IC code 36-8-10-12. And it states the minimum annual contribution by the department must be sufficient as determined by the pension engineers to prevent deterioration of the plan. Basically, our pension engineers provides the number every year, and the county council shall pay it. And it's right here in the IC code. There are also 2 Indiana Court of Appeals cases that support this IC code. The first one is Sharton versus Slack. It's on your next page. And this is a case that comes out of Clay County, Indiana, in which the mayor board sued the county council to fund the pension plan. It went to the Indiana Court of Appeals, who reversed the lower court's decision. The Court of Appeals concluded that IC 17-3-14-11 is mandatory, that the county council may not refuse to allocate funds for the sheriff's department contribution to an actuarially sound plan. It also states that police agencies can establish pension trust and county councils must appropriate the funds if an actuarially sound plan is presented. Kind of goes back to the IC code that I just read, Ed. Although IC code 17-3-14-11 was repealed, the court ruled that legislators seemed fit to preserve these benefits for county police officers in the new Title 36, which was the first title that I presented to you guys.
If I can, just maybe for clarification, the amount that's established that must be paid, shall be paid, must be paid, is not set by you or the sheriff. That's set by McCready and Keene out of Indianapolis, an independent company who establishes what the actuary is.
Correct, and that's determined by state law that we use, not McCready and Keene, but that we use a pension engineer. McCready and Keene is our pension engineer for our pension plan, and state law states just that. It doesn't come from me or the sheriff or anyone else within the county. That comes from McCready and Keene in Indianapolis, as determined by the IC code, correct?
Thank you.
The next case that kind of supports the requirements for the funding is Butler versus Heffelmeyer. This is the case that comes out of Dearborn County, in which the officers wanted to get off the pension plan or PERF plan and create their own pension plan. And the county council again refused to fund it, and they sued. And the courts reversed back to Sharp versus Slackton. That states that no. The law allows for the sheriff's departments to create their pension plan, and as long as they present a plan that's sound, you have to fund it. And they cited the previous case that I cited in their case in regards to funding. If you flip to the next page, I did a 10-year comparison of where we were at in 2011 and where we're at in 2021. Real quickly, in 2011, we had 32 total persons receiving payments, 25 direct payments, retired officers collecting their monthly checks. We had 6 beneficiary payments and 1 disability payment going out. The average monthly payment was $2,155, and the total yearly payout, $827,510. That's how much our pension was paying out to those 32 people receiving payments every year. The county contributed $981,000 that year, and our pension value was under $20 million, $19,733,000. Fast forward to 2021, we have 57 people receiving payments out of our pension plan right now. That's a 78% increase from where we were 10 years ago. The average monthly payment, $2,150. And you'll see that's a 0.25% decrease from where we were at 10 years. And that doesn't make much sense. But at first when I did that, I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And so I got looking back. Since 2011, we've had 10 officers retire, and their monthly checks were lower than the original amount. They're drawing a monthly pension that's much lower than that $2,155, which brought the average down by $5 a month. And our total yearly payout is $1.4 million. And again, what's neat to see about that is the number of people receiving pensions and the total yearly payout both increased 78%. So they mirror each other and they're right on track. Our merit payroll increased 34% from 2011, and that's because of the raises we've received. And the county contribution from 2011 and 2021, if you notice, they both increased 34% as well too. So again, nothing is going outrageous out of the way. We're right on track. 78%, 78%, 34%, 34%. So it's all just right in line with the cost of living and with the raises. There's nothing that's earth-shattering in why we're seeing these increases every year.
Chief, on that page, I think the one thing that sticks out is the total yearly payout of 1.4, almost $1.5 million to the people who are on the pension, and the county's contribution is actually less than that. It's $800,000, something like that, whatever.
You just beat me to the punch, and exactly that was one of my next points is the county's pension plan, the sheriff's office pension plan, actually pays out more a year to retirees than the county contributes into the plan.
So that's why it's vital to have it.
And that's why it's vital to keep it funded properly, because we don't want to see it get exponentially out of control. If we can keep the increases minimal and manageable throughout the years, because I'm looking to keep the fund solvent 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, not just for me, but for the younger guys on the department who are going to be collecting their pensions down the road. And I'm looking out for the county taxpayers' money by keeping these increases small, because if we go from 1.3, maybe $1.35 million a year, that's a manageable increase. We all can budget and plan for that. But if we go from $1.3 million, let's say to $2.3 million, now that's going to be a big hit, and the taxpayers are going to be bargaining as to why we allowed that to happen, and that's not fair to the taxpayers. So.
Chief, it's also a good reason to manage the performance of the funds.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, which I know the pension board looks at very closely. Yeah.
And our pension plan is a large animal, so to speak. It's been in existence since 1966. It's a very mature, it's a very healthy plan. Again, we've got a lot of people on the plan, and there's a lot of variables that they come up to our yearly actuary that come into play with that, and that is obviously the number of officers, their salary, mortality rate, their age, their years of service. A lot goes into that. Also, the performance of the plan. Last year we saw a good year, but that's averaged out over the entire life of the plan, not just the current year. We can't just look at the current year and think, well, we did great, we're not going to pay less.
I wonder
it's not looking at all that. It's looking 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, not 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road in regards to that. So
I know that it's in the actuarial numbers or calculations, but I think it would be interesting to see, and you don't have to report back to me, I'm just saying interesting to see what the life expectancy has, and I'm going to assume increased between 2011 and 2021, what the life expectancy calculation is.
Right,
because
that's correct.
I know that you don't necessarily have to report that, and that's what the actuaries do, but that's might be an interesting number just to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I do know that the average years of service that our officers have right now is 11.2 years. So we're a young department, and we need to plan for the future, because when all these young guys go to retire in 15, 20 years, that's when we're going to need the work that we're doing now to pay dividends in the long run.
And I think either McCready and Keene or First Source could probably put together some future projections or future valuations for you based on having young, you have to guess, but
right.
Based on a certain percentage of those officers staying until retirement age, and looking at the fund performance, and then the amount of money put in by the county. I think they can put some projections, maybe, best case, worst case situations.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that will be important to show, how the taxpayer dollars are put to use.
There's been several years that our pension lost money. For instance, September 11th, the stock market's tanked. We lost money that year. The housing crisis back in 2008, we lost money there. And if it wasn't for the last quarter of 2020, we would have taken a huge hit, because everybody knows what the stock market did when COVID reared its ugly head in the United States. They tanked, and they tanked hard, and we lost a lot of money. Thankfully, we were able to make it up in the final quarter and then some of last year. So, it doesn't take much, and we're going to have to make up that difference. So, we got to stay on it, that's for sure.
The other thing too, in reference to what Laura just mentioned, is the one thing that cannot be calculated in is the amount of pay raises or that are going to be given to the current employees plus whatever COLA is going to be given to the retired employees. That's really kind of a crapshoot because you just don't know how.
Well, our pension engineers, when they get our actuary, they automatically assume that the men and women of the sheriff's office is going to get a 4% raise.
Okay.
Whether we get 0 or whether we get 7, that's part of the variables that go in. They automatically assume that we're going to get a 4% raise every year to keep up with the cost of living and longevity raises that the guys receive. So, and then the final note, as you can see, our pension at the last update that we got from our managers, $4,855,000, which is a 107% increase from 2021 or 2011. So I think we're on the right track. The next couple of pages, we'll kind of breeze through this in the spirit of brevity. They just show some slides, kind of some comparisons of what I was just presenting. Although one that I do want to show you would be on page 14. And your pages aren't numbered, but it's this page, and it's the 10-year historical contributions. Now, mind you, we pay into it with our civil process service fees, and that's part of this total contributions that go up that we pay every year for our actuary. And as you can see, over the last 10 years, it's gone up a little bit. But I want to bring your attention to your 2014, 2015, and 2016. We can see that it's kind of declined and started to go down over those years. Well, if they increase every year with the raises, why do we see a decrease? And again, that's because our pension plan is doing so well. But in 2017, we started to see it starting to increase again to where we're at 2021 at $1.395 million. And that had me confused for a minute because, the previous data showed that it kept up with payroll. Why did that go down all of a sudden and start going up? And then it hit me. If you remember back in about 2014, 2015, we had 3 new SROs to the department. So what's that do? That increases the merit payroll exponentially, not exponentially, but more than just pay raises. And over the last couple of years, we've added 3 new officers to the department, 2 patrolmen and a truck enforcement officer, which added to the county's payroll other than the normal pay raises. So that's the reason we saw the increases after we had saw several years of decreases. So it's no surprise as to why we've seen some increases, and it's just going with the flow, basically. And then the last page, I got some takeaways and highlights that I want to present to you guys. Our pension has doubled over the last 10 years from 19 million to 40 million. The number of retirees increased along with the yearly payout. The sheriff's office has increased by 6 deputies over the last 10 years. That adds to the payroll, obviously. The percentage of payroll has stayed stagnant or has actually decreased over the last 10 years. And what we've always been told, we want to keep that percentage of the payroll, and our actuaries dependent on the percentage of the payroll. The lower we can get that percentage of the payroll, the lower the actuary will come down. And that's the key, is to keep the percentage of payroll down to a minimum. The pension plan pays out more to retirees yearly than the county contributes. And what's interesting is the next one. Over the last 10 years, the county's contributions have increased an average of $39,000 a year. Very manageable. We can plan and prepare for that. It's when it goes up to well over $300,000 a year or $1 million a year, that's when it starts to become out of control. So, again, although the county's contribution has risen every year, it's been small, manageable increases that we can budget, plan, and prepare for. And again, we've got the Indiana Code 36.8.10.12, which requires it, and the 2 Indiana State of Appeals cases that support that IC code. Are there any questions?
I have a comment that this takes a lot of work, okay, and this is impressive.
Thank you.
And I would hope that our county council and that the citizens of our county would appreciate the great job, not only that you did, but of the whole fund and how it's managed, but that the great effort that you put into this, and what I would hope that they would be very proud of our department and what our department's doing and how it's taking care of the people that protect us in our community. I mean, there's really nobody that you want to put higher on a hierarchy than to take care of our law enforcement.
Well, absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think any police officer who gets into the profession realizes the pay's not the greatest. But they'll dedicate 20, 25, 30 plus years to be able to retire and enjoy their life after that. You allow the pension plan to go defunct, and our salary, we've done a salary study, is one of the lowest in the area. It's not that difficult to go out and find a job in law enforcement that pays $10,000, $20,000 more a year, just right here, 20-mile radius of LaPorte County, and then they get a pension plan. So we allow this pension plan to go defunct, and we offer a salary that's much less than the local competitors. Who's going to apply for the sheriff's office? Not only that, at December 31st, on year 3, if the fund's not properly funded and it goes defunct as described in the state, you're going to see a mass exodus, because the guys who are vested are going to leave because they want to leave with something, and then the younger guys are going to go out to another department where they can get on PERF or get into another pension plan. So
I would hope it would
be bare.
never go to that. Let's hope.
And with that being said, I don't believe it will. I don't ever foresee that.
But I do think future, and I think you'd have to look at the cost for whoever to look at that, but it might be worth a conversation to say, can we take a look at future projections based on certain variables? Now, we're never going to know exactly, but if we could put some things together, and if it's not that much more expensive, I think that would behoove us to take a look at it. Here's what the county is providing, and we know potentially who's going to be retiring in certain years. I think it would be beneficial to see what the future valuations would be for the fund.
Yeah, I think that you're right. That would be neat to see if we can project 10 years what the
5, 10, 15, and adjust them. Yeah.
Very hard because we've seen it a lot over the years. Guys come here, they leave.
Right.
They've only put 1 or 2 years in, or they, an officer decides. We've seen it here in the last couple of years too. At 17 years of service, 15 years of service, just it's not for me anymore.
I bet you there's a calculation. I'm just saying.
I'm sure there's formulas and everything
that they can plug in.
That's above my pay grade and my education level and everything. I think
they might be able to do it easily. Maybe not, but
they might. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Formulas that be able to tell us that. So.
Chief, I think another thing, and I've said this over and over and over, that if you roll back the hands of time, looking at our pension, goes back to the previous sheriff when it was discovered there was illegal activity being taken place within the fund, withdrawals that weren't supposed to be taking place. That threw up a flag. Then we found out that it was brought to our attention that the bank that was handling our funds was charging us an exorbitant amount of money to handle that.
Right.
And when we called them out on that in public, matter of fact, it was in a merit board meeting, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we made a mistake, and they wanted to drop it.
Right.
But they didn't go back and pay us back for all the tens of thousands of dollars that they took from us. But we now have a pension board that was set up to prevent anything that's like happened in the past. It has got checks and counter checks and double checks and triple checks, and Chris Dilts does a great job. First Source Bank stays within the parameters of what the fund is supposed to do, and if they don't, they get called out on it. I mean, if they're 0.1% one way or another, get it back in place.
And I don't think there's anybody here, I know there's nobody here, but I, like myself, the sheriff, and the other guys, that don't want to see this solvable. We want to see it solvable, and that way when we go to retire, who knows how many years from now, that it's there for us and our family, So, yeah, you're absolutely right. we have just a more vested interest in this than anybody out there, so we want to see it done right.
Thank you for your presentation, Chief.
Thank you, guys.
Good job.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Chief, excellent job. You did a really good job of putting that together and presenting it as well. And again, I apologize about not having the PowerPoint here.
That's all right.
We had it overcome.
Yep.
So thank you. Mrs. Francisconi, I appreciate your comments as well, because it really is true. The amazing sacrifices that our staff make every single day for the people of LaPorte County. And our deputies are doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. It's not too much to ask that they be able to collect a pension and a good pension for the sacrifices that they made. 2020 really made us realize how important that is and how valuable we are. The civil unrest that we had here in LaPorte County, admittedly, we didn't have any complaints of use of force here in the county, and we suffered because of what we represented. And people had a right to protest and to voice their frustration with what was going on nationwide. Unfortunately, there were times that our officers, our troopers, and our deputies, we received the brunt of that. Having golf balls thrown at us, eggs, rocks, bricks, super soakers full of urine and other substances. The risk because of COVID, but as I said, some of the risks associated with COVID pale in comparison to some of the other bloodborne pathogens that we are exposed to every day. There's a reason that law enforcement has the highest mortality rate of most professions, and why our life expectancy is considerably less than the rest of the general public. And it's because of what we're exposed to, and it's because of the risks and the stress that we face each and every day. So I hope that that's taken into consideration by those that are in power to realize whether or not they're going to fund our pension. So again, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Austin Wells selected his canine partner on February 18th at Von Leck Kennels. He selected a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois named Roman, which would obviously make him a male. He's now attending a 6-week training with his partner that started on March 9th. Roman is a dual-purpose dog that's certified in narcotics detection, tracking, searching, and apprehension. He was purchased through donation and fundraising efforts. So I'm going to point out that there were no taxpayer dollars that go to support our canine program. Last week, a service organization reached out to us, and they stated that they had seen that we had acquired a new canine, and they pledged a ballistic vest for Roman once he successfully completes his training in April. We're really excited about that. On Sunday evening, February 14th, talking about some of the risks that we face, the Sheriff's Office responded to 2 back-to-back critical incident complaints. In the first case, an armed suicidal man was barricaded in a home in the Hudson Lake area, and he threatened to harm himself and an intimate partner and our deputies. An attempt to negotiate with him was made, but he was extremely intoxicated. He was irrational and very angry. He soon ran out of the home. He was armed with a handgun, and he was quickly subdued by our deputies, who were armed with less lethal beanbag rounds. He was ultimately transported to the hospital, where he was admitted for his psychological issues. While that incident was wrapping up, we were summoned to a home in Fish Lake, where a stabbing had taken place. The victim was transported to an area hospital, but the suspect refused to enter his home, and he was uncooperative with the responding deputies. Chemical munitions were introduced into his home, and he soon exited, and he was taken into custody without incident. Calls like these are extremely taxing on our equipment and our staff. It was quite cold out. We were having very heavy snow, and yet our deputies exercised patience and professionalism. They used very good decision-making and sound tactics, and they used their equipment that they're trained on and they're familiar with. We could not be more proud of them. Perhaps they would have been justified in using deadly force with this individual who came charging at them with a weapon, but they chose to use less lethal beanbag rounds, and mission was accomplished. We were able to subdue him without any serious injuries to him. Pursuant to our rules and regulations, on February 16th, we did convene a shooting review board, and it was the opinion of the members of the board that the force that was used was necessary, and it certainly was justified. With that said, I do have a letter of commendation that I'd like to read. It was written by Captain Andrew Heineck, Sheriff Boyd, and LaPorte County Sheriff's Board members. I'd like to take an opportunity to recognize several members from our agency for their actions on the night of Sunday, February 14th, 2021. The afternoon shift was spread thin as they were on the scene of a barricaded subject in the northeastern part of the county. When I reached out to members of the midnight shift who were scheduled to work that night, every one of them came out early and started picking up calls in the heavy snow due to conditions that our county was experiencing. At approximately 9:15, the 911 center dispatched a call of a reported stabbing in the Fish Lake area, and Deputy Austin Heppel and Indiana Conservation Officer Alex Toth responded, and upon their arrival, a victim was being tended to by EMS and a suspect who refused to come out of his home. I responded to the scene and arrived to find both the conservation officer and Deputy Heppel in a tactical position that allowed both a position to observe the suspect and ensured that each of them were safe. I quickly realized that we were going to need the specialized assistance of negotiators and emergency response team resources. I contacted Captain Derek Allen and Deputy Scott Lanew, who had already been outside for a long period of time in the elements with the previous barricaded subject call, and both responded without question. I reached out to the investigative division to assist with garnering information from the victim who was at the hospital, and both Captain Patrick Cicero and Sergeant Adam Hannon responded. Sergeant Jeff Wright, who's trained in the operations of chemical munitions deployment, responded to the scene, and he had also just been at the previous barricaded subject call. Sheriff John Boyd, Chief Deputy Ron Heeg, and Deputy Jeff Molina responded to round out the team of the perimeter containment. Eventually, the suspect was extracted from the resident without injury to him or our personnel. As mentioned earlier, the entire county was experiencing heavy snowfall, leading to an increased number of calls for service from stranded citizens and on our roadways. The team of deputies who handled these calls during the Fish Lake call was made up of Deputies William Masterson, Michael Walker, John Roby, David Grimberg, and Austin Howell. The last important note of the night is that to date, not a single one of these deputies has asked for or put in for any type of compensation. They simply came out and handled the task at hand because it was the right thing to do to ensure their fellow deputies were safe and the citizens continue to have a level of service that they have come to expect from our agency. Officers to be commended are Sheriff John Boyd, Chief Deputy Ron Heeg, Captain Patrick Cicero, Captain Derek Allen, Sergeant Adam Hannon, Sergeant Jeff Wright, Deputy Michael Walker, Deputy Scott Lanew, Deputy William Masterson, Deputy John Roby Jr., Deputy Jen Molina, Deputy Austin Heppel, Deputy David Grimberg, Deputy Austin Howell, and Indiana Conservation Officer Alex Toth. Respectfully submitted, Captain Andrew Heineck. Captain Heineck, thank you for taking the time to highlight this and bringing this to our attention. It really was all hands on deck that night. It is really nice when we have an incident where we have so many deputies and resources tied up, and we have other calls for service that are coming in. We simply can't tell victims of crime or people that need our help, sorry, but we don't have anybody to send. It's nice that we begin to make those calls. Our deputies who have take-home cars respond, and the fact that they didn't put it in for any overtime for that because they just want to be able to give back and contribute, it is really gratifying, and the public should really be reassured to know that we are here when they need us. And again, the decision-making that was utilized that night was second to none. I couldn't be more proud of our deputies. This is probably the fourth or fifth time in the last couple of years that we've deployed less lethal munitions beanbag rounds to successfully disarm our people who were suicidal, who were homicidal, who threatened us, threatened the public, or threatened people that were in their home. We have exercised a lot of discretion. I'm really proud of our staff. Finally, I'd like to end this on another good note, is the fact that on February 12th, there was a group from Clinton Township, a 4-H group called the Clinton Climbers. They delivered 4 dozen donuts to our staff here at the Sheriff's Office, and it was really uplifting. They were Valentine's-themed donuts. They were all heart-shaped, and it was really kind and thoughtful of these kids. These kids range in age from 8 to 17, again from Clinton Township, the Hannah area, and they all made homemade cards for us. And their 4-H leaders that delivered these cards said that this was completely the idea of these kids. Every year they pick a group that they want to do something philanthropic philanthropic for, and they chose the sheriff's office because they know the many sacrifices that we make, and they see us and they appreciate what we do. And I chose one of the 26 cards, and I want to read this because this is really heartfelt. They all were, but this really was. Well, as you can see, it says, "Would you police be my Valentine?"
Aww.
Thank you for protecting us every day. You make the world safer every second of every day. I hope you enjoy this card and the donuts. I'm so grateful for you serving us every day. Thank you so much. You probably don't know how much you are appreciated in this world. Love, Claire Laniski from the Clinton Township 4-H Climbers. That was really, really kind and really sweet. It came at a great time for us. And about the time that we were dealing with these issues in Hudson Lake, in Fish Lake, and then we had some public that were questioning what we had been doing and why we did what we did, and it's nice to know that there are young people that are thankful for us and recognize what we do and are grateful. Our next Mayor Commission is Wednesday, April 14th at 9 a.m. You'll see that the Warrants Division, Detective Bureau, and Jail Monthly reports are attached. And as I say every month, you can see exactly how busy we are. I do want to bring to your attention, Mr. Kimmel, because you had asked earlier, Captain Ott was up here, the assaults on staff. You'll see in the jail, there was one last month. And I also want to point out Deputy Jim Jackson and what he does for the community. As you may know, since COVID hit, we've suspended that program, but that means that he's working harder than he ever has because he is the community work project program. He is the one that's going out and doing all this work alone. He's not taking inmates out because of COVID. We don't want to take a chance because whenever there's movement within the jail, we have to quarantine those inmates that have been moved for 14 days, and obviously it would be a vicious cycle. We can't do that. We don't want them to be super spreaders within the jail, so he's doing it himself. And there have been a number of times that he's stepped up to the plate. Because of the severe storms that the southern part of the United States suffered 2 weeks ago, if you remember, they had severe snow and ice storms. Our food deliveries couldn't make it in from down south. And so Jim Jackson was going to GFS at the request of Tiger Commissary and picking up food for us and bringing it back, delivering it down into the kitchen. And he also came in on a Friday night at about 9:45 when the truck finally was able to make it through, and he helped to unload the entire semi and take all the food down to the basement and get it stocked and stored. He did that on his own on a Friday night because he knows how important it is that we feed our inmates. We don't stop feeding our inmates even if there is a food shortage. That said, every one of them got all their meals. When we couldn't have any inmate workers in our jail because of COVID, Jim Jackson was one of those that was preparing meals every day with our kitchen staff, along with the rest of our administrative staff that was down in our kitchen, not only preparing food and passing food, but washing dishes as well and cleaning and doing laundry, because laundry still has to continue to take place. It's about a 18-hour-a-day process, 7 days a week. And so it was our key administrators and Jim Jackson that was doing that, and he is eager to help. In addition, as you know, we had our range training 2 weeks ago when it was about 0 degrees out, and we had 2.5 feet of snow. It was Jim Jackson that was out there cleaning all the lanes and making sure that we were able to have our range qualification, because heaven forbid we cancel it because it's snowing or really cold out. But he does a number of tasks and duties for us, and we're really proud of what he brings to the table and the many, many contributions he makes to and for the people of LaPorte County. So I know this was a long meeting. We had a lot of information to go over, and again, I apologize about having me in here today, but thank you for overcoming it and just adapting.
Thank you. Looking at the minutes from last month, Mrs. Francesconi, you made a motion to table the qualification scores until this month's meeting and to make sure there were no remonsters on that. Were there any? Captain?
Yes, may I approach?
Please.
So I was prepared to come in and speak today during closing remarks to update on the status of this. The sheriff reported to me that at the close of the demonstration period that there were none that were received. So the plan has been made and the changes have been made on the evaluation form to the the current document that was provided to you all last month, and we're set to go next week for qualification with the new course fire for merit division, and then any jail deputies in which they are required to carry a firearm.
Thank you, Captain. Laura, would you like to have that taken off the table?
Yes, I would.
Is that a motion?
That I make a move. I make a motion, yeah.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Opposed? None. Okay, so now we need to vote on those scores that are listed here that Captain Allen presented at last month's meeting to make sure that is approved and can be forthwith on the training at the range and also reflected on their evaluations. Can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
I have a motion to have a second. Second. Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Thank you. Comments from the floor? You've already been up here.
This is going to be quick. On Monday, I met with the ladies of the VFW Women's Auxiliary here on McClung Road. And if you remember back in 2019, they presented our department with 3 separate checks to help support the AED in the Vote for the Heart program to help us get the AEDs in the car. Ann Kessler from the VFW reached out to me and said they had another check for us. And they made another check for us for a donation account, canine donation account for the amount of $200.
Awesome.
So that was very nice of them. They've been great supporters of the Sheriff's Office, and they raise these funds with their Friday night bingo that they hold every Friday night. So that was great. And then yesterday afternoon, as I was preparing to leave, one of the afternoon deputies came in, and he had cleared a residence and a call for service, and they made a $10 donation to the canine fund as well too.
Wow.
So I thought that was very nice of them.
Yes.
They made the donation when he was there at their house. So.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments? Comments from the floor? Hearing none. Comments from the floor closed. Comments from the board. Mr. Wheatbrook.
Not a thing right now.
Nothing right now. Jim? Ms. Mock? Mrs. Francisconi?
Just quickly want to say that because of meetings like this and reports and details, that just, on top of what you do every day for the safety of our community, shows what a gem this department is. This, just a gem. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. I want to just take a couple minutes to reflect again on what took place today. And Captain Ott, thank you for coming in. Even though the jail really doesn't fall under us, it's always reassuring to hear that you and your staff and the offenders over there are taking this seriously. It bodes well, in my opinion, that your staff are doing just a great job over there to keep it moving and keeping everything under control. So thank you for reporting on that. Sheriff, thank you for all that you've done and everything you've kept going. The untimely death of Lieutenant Laskow hit me pretty hard with my background, but some things came out of that were very positive. I received numerous phone calls from staff at the prison that I've maintained contact with, and just the gestures that came out from this department were overwhelming, especially, and I talked to the sheriff about this, and part of that was a reflection of Captain Heineck and his shift. I believe he reached out to the sheriff to ask permission, and there was a constant flow of brown around the prison. I know Captain Heineck went up and gave some challenge coins to the officers manning the main gate, and that meant well. It kind of gave them a rest and reassured that people cared. So thank you for doing that. That's about all I have. I hope Captain Allen has a good time getting all the dirt out from underneath his vehicle from his crossfield exploratory thing last week. But he said he's going to put a garden hose underneath there with an aerator, see if he can get it out that way. So. But thanks for everybody for what you're doing. Be safe. Please watch your six when you're out there, and we'll get through this. For those of you who have gone through the vaccination process and you're now got both of your shots, thank you for doing that to make you and your families healthy and you yourself stay safe. So that's all I have. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a motion of second.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion adjourned at 10:25 a.m. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right, though.